Welcome to today's science lesson. Our topic today is Earth resources. Earth resources. There are some questions we can ask ourselves and see what answers we can get to these questions, because these questions are important as far as living organisms, human beings are concerned on Earth. One of the questions we can ask ourselves is, have you ever wondered what will happen to human beings if we could run out of resources such as coal or oil? What will happen if oil or coal runs out? What will happen? Another question we can ask ourselves is, why should we save energy? Why should we save energy? Is it important to save energy, or we should just use the energy the way we want without saving it? Is it important to save energy? It is another question we can ponder and ask ourselves why we should save energy. We can also ask ourselves, how are clouds formed? Or should we not get bothered, we just see clouds and we leave clouds the way they are? How are the clouds formed? Is there a process that comes up when these clouds are being formed? Should we like to know how these clouds are formed? Is it important when these clouds form? Do they affect our day-to-day activities and our lives? Another question we can now ask ourselves, why should people care? Why should people care about what they put in the air? Should we care what we put in the air? Should we care what we put in the atmosphere? Why should we care what we put in the atmosphere? Or why should we care what we put in the soil? Are there some things when we place in the soil, we disrupt it, we destroy it? Why should we care what we put in the soil? Those are some of the important questions we should ask ourselves before we start tackling these Earth resources. Human beings need many things to stay alive. Human beings need many things to stay alive, meaning whatever these things that we need are important for our existence. What do we need? We need food. We need food. Therefore, if we need food, then food becomes an important resource in our lives. So we need food, we need air. We should not take air for granted. Without air, we can cease to exist. So air is important as far as human beings' life is concerned, and also as far as even living organisms are concerned. The living organisms or living things depend on air for them to breathe and so forth. So we are saying food is an important resource. We are also saying air is an important resource. We know that air comprises a number of gases. There are gases that are very important to the existence of living things. And we are saying also water. Human beings, we need water. Living things need water. Water is another important resource that we require. Apart from water, we need shelter. If we talk of living things, we say yes, if they're animals, they require also shelter. They require a habitat, a place they live in, a place they stay. So in one way we are saying these needs are made by natural resources on Earth. We are saying these needs that we want, what we want as human beings, what living things require for them to continue existing, we say yes, the Earth is there, and the Earth is providing natural resources so that we as human beings and living things, we shall depend on these natural resources for our proper existence. It is therefore the responsibility of everyone to protect these vital resources. I'm saying it is therefore very important, and it is therefore the responsibility of everyone to protect these vital resources. Well, we are not saying that living organisms like animals and others have the responsibility of taking care of these vital resources. We are saying no. They might not be in a position to take care of these vital resources. But human beings, because they have a mind, they are rational human beings. Therefore, they have responsibility of taking care of these vital resources, the natural resources, so that other animals, other living organisms such as animals, they can coexist well on this earth. They can exist well on earth. So it is a responsibility of human beings to take care of the natural resources that are present on earth. Therefore, today we shall start learning on these natural resources, what the natural resources are, and so forth. Natural resources. When we are talking about natural resources, we ask ourselves, what is a resource? What is a resource? A resource is anything obtained from earth. Would like to write that definition down. We are saying, what is a resource? And for us to continue very well, we are saying, what is a resource? So it is important to know what a resource is. A resource is anything obtained from the earth. A resource is anything obtained from the earth. So we are saying a resource is anything obtained from the earth to satisfy a particular need in humans. From the earth to satisfy a particular need. A particular need in humans. We are saying to satisfy a particular need in humans or other living things. Or other living things. We are saying a resource is not there for only human beings to benefit from. No, resources are there to support and to sustain the life of human beings as well as to sustain the life of other living things. We are saying most natural resources are substances such as, when we talk of now natural resources, because we have defined what is a resource, we have said a resource is anything obtained from the earth to satisfy a particular need in humans or living things. That is what we call resources. When we talk of what about these natural resources that we have, natural resources are substances such as rocks. Maybe we might tend to, when we write that natural resources are substances such as rocks, rocks are the way they are, but they are very important because from these rocks we can derive minerals, we can get metals from there that are very important. So we are saying natural substances, natural resources are substances such as rocks, air. So air is a natural substance, it is a resource, it is available naturally. We also have water. Water is a natural resource. Apart from that, we also have sunlight as a natural resource. So when we talk of sunlight, we cannot get sunlight within the earth. We know that we obtain sunlight from the sun, but it's very important. It's a form of energy which many things depend upon. If you remove the sunlight, then a lot of life will cease to exist because it is from the sun's energy that even plants are able to manufacture their own food. Therefore, we are saying sunlight is not a substance, but it is a form of energy, and it is needed by almost all living things on earth. So it can be considered to be an earth resource, though it comes from space. So we are saying sunlight, it can be considered to be an earth resource, though it comes from the space. The major natural resources on earth are as follows. We want to list some of the major natural resources that are present within the Earth. The major natural resources on Earth are as follows. We want to mention some of these major natural resources. We can start with the first one, which we had mentioned. We can say rocks. Rocks are very important. We had said earlier that from rocks we can get minerals, we can get metals that are important, and we can use them for other important activities. Another important natural resource, minerals. Rocks can also be used for building and so forth. We have minerals. And from the minerals, we can include metals, such as metals and fossil fuels. Fossil fuels. What happens when we are talking about fossil fuels? Fossils normally, these fossils, we have heard about coral reefs. First, the living organisms, but when they die, they form coral reefs. Some of them, when they die and under compression, they come up and they form fossil fuels. These are fuels that are derived from dead organisms that died many thousands and millions of years ago. Then we get these fossil fuels like oil and coal. Like oil and coal. Yes, like oil and coal. Oil and coal. The coal is found found in rocks. Coal found in rocks. So we are saying we have rocks as one of the natural resources, and minerals are others, and under the minerals we have such metals, fossil fuels, and also we have oil and coal. All of them are important because they're part of the natural resources that benefit human beings. And another important natural resource is soil. We know from soil, plants and many things, they grow on soil. You will plant crops, they will grow very well on soil. But depending, we have types of soil as we are going to learn later on. But we are saying soil is a very important natural resource. And we shall see whether it is a natural resource that can be renewed or not, depending on our practices. Another fourth importance of another major natural resource is air. Air that is available in the atmosphere. We know that air comprises a number of gases. We shall later on know what this air comprises of, but we are saying air is very important for the exchange of gases. Living things depend on air for them to breathe and also to do a number of activities that will enable to ensure that living organisms exist and is alive. Another important natural resource is water. Water, it is very difficult for any living organisms to exist for a long period without water. We can say a larger percentage of body parts of these living organisms is formed by water. So therefore, if we say water is not there, and then we find that living organisms will not exist, water is very important. And for the scientists who have been researching on life, when they move from one planet or one continent to another, they are using telescope. They want to see, is there any other planet that has water? Because they feel if there is water on the moon, then there's life. If there's water in other planets, whether it is Venus and so forth, then there might be life there. So water is used to trace life. Without water, then we cannot speak of life. Another major natural resource, the sixth one, we have living things. When we talk of living things as another major natural resource, what we are saying about living things is human beings will depend on these living things, meaning human beings can feed on living things, which are plants. You can feed on the plants. We can also feed on other living organisms like animals. So they become natural resources that are available. We feed on them, and depending on how we can care for them, they can be renewed. Meaning if the animals, they can reproduce. If the living things are plants, plants can regrow again. So we can depend on them because when we eat from them, we can gain energy and so forth. We are also saying, apart from living things being a natural resource, then the last one that is obvious, another natural resource, is the sunlight. So we are saying sunlight as a natural resource, we are saying is very important. From the sunlight, it is able to keep the atmosphere around the earth warmer. And if the atmosphere around the earth is kept warm, it gives water under specific temperatures that is found in liquid form. So if we remove sunlight, and you know that sunlight comes along with the proper temperatures which water can exist in liquid form. So if we make a mistake of removing the light and the temperature is not there, then you will find that the atmosphere will cool to a level whereby even water will freeze. It will not only be the water that is around the atmosphere that is going to freeze, even within the living organisms, because the living organism contain water, that water can also freeze. So we are saying sunlight is very important. If we remove sunlight, then we shall have a problem of living organism freezing and the water outside freezing. So it's important that we have sunlight so that the temperature can be maintained, so that water can be available in the liquid state. So it's very important. And we are saying that sunlight is also important because for the plant, they will be able to trap this sunlight, and together with the carbon dioxide, they will be able to manufacture their own food and also produce and replace oxygen that is being used by animal from the atmosphere, which is which we can say it's okay. So we are saying all life depends on these resources, these natural resources that we have mentioned here. We are saying all life depends on these natural resources that were mentioned here. And we are saying protecting them gives all living things a better chance of survival. So it is upon human beings to ensure that we protect these natural resources so that we can be supported well, we can survive well. Messing up with these natural resources, it means now we are messing up with our own survival. After these natural resources, we shall go to made resources, meaning they are man-made resources. Human beings have come up and they have also made some resources, and these made resources are extracted, are made from the natural resources. We shall observe them and see what they are. So we have said that made resources cannot be present at their own. Made resources are gotten from the natural resources. So we are saying not all resources are natural. Some are made by human. So we are saying these resources that are made by human are the ones that we want to know. How comes that? What kind of resources do human come up with? Made resources start as natural resources. So from the natural resources, we can acquire made resources. Some of the important made resources are as follows. One, we are saying the following is a made resources. Food. We are not just going to say if maybe you pluck an apple or an orange you eat, you say that orange is food and then it is a made resources. No. Human beings, as human beings, you have not interfered. There's nothing that you have added on that particular apple or orange. Therefore, orange, although it is food, it is not a made resources. But for instance, if we give an example of bread, bread is not a natural resource. It is a made resource because human being in one way, you have taken wheat, you have grinded that wheat, and then you have decided to make to come up by making up bread. So bread becomes made resources. So when we talk of just food, it is not the food that is available naturally, like maybe the fruits that we get. We are saying, what extra utility have you added upon that food? So if it has undergone some changes, then we can say you have made it a made resources. So we have given one example as food. Another example, we can have leather. Now, when we talk of leather, then the picture that will come in our mind, leather is made from animal skins. It's made from animal skins, and we talk of hides depending on the nature of that animal. So if we talk of skins directly or hides, then that one is not a made resource. But when we come to leather, then we say something has happened to that skin or the hide that you got from an animal. Now it is leather. So a leather becomes a made resources. And from the made resources, we also have this is the second made resources, and another made resources, we can talk of natural fibers made from plants. And when we talk of natural fibers made from plants, we are meaning things like cotton, natural fibers made from plants, e.g. we are talking of cotton. So we are saying, yes, cotton can be planted, you can plant cotton, but for you to get a cloth from that cotton, then you can see what we are saying, that now it's a made resource, because from the natural fibers you can be able to extract cotton, and not only cotton alone, you can also get linen. You can also get linen, and also from animals you can get wool. You can get wool. It is a made resource. You can get linen. And when we talk of wool, we know that those farmers who are able to keep sheep, merino sheep, they can be able to get wool from merino sheep. And from this wool, then they can go on to make sweaters, cardigans, blankets, and so forth. So we can say, yes, you are making these clothes and so forth, but you are getting them. You have come up with a made resource called wool, a made resource called linen, a made resource from natural fibers called cotton. We are calling them the we are calling them the made resources. Another for the made resources, we can talk of the plastics and the synthetic fibers. The plastics and synthetic fibers. Plastics and the synthetic fibers. And when we are talking about the plastic and synthetic fibers, to come up with the plastic, it was an issue of technology that came into being close to 1900. That is AD. The year 1900, 19th century, people came up with the technology, and they were able to come up with the plastics. And those who have known plastics have replaced a number of metals, they have replaced a number of woods and so forth, shopping bags, and people have started using plastics that are everywhere. So we also have synthetic fibers such as polyester, made from oil. We have polyester. These polyesters are made resources, but we are making them from other natural resources that is available. We also can talk of fuel like petrol. It's another made resource. Fuel like petrol. Yes, we are saying fuel like petrol, diesel. Diesel is not just found within the state as if it is diesel. We find that human activities have to be organized well, and they will extract from some minerals so that they can get this diesel. So we are saying fuels like petrol, diesel, and kerosene are made from oil. You will extract oil, but from that oil, is when now we'll come up with a made resource like diesel, like petrol, like kerosene. And we know that kerosene, we shall use it for our activities, for our own benefit. We shall use petrol for a number of activities and so forth. So it is a made resource. Fuel is a made resource. We can go to a sixth made resource that is important. We extract it from the natural resources. We have metals such as iron and aluminium. So metals such as iron, aluminium. Just for instance, metals such as iron, aluminium are made from minerals found in rocks. From minerals found in rocks, made from, so metals such as iron, aluminium, and we know the importance of iron, we know the importance of minerals in terms of construction and building. They are very important. So we are saying these metals, yes, we are able to get our aluminium and so forth. These are made resources. We are getting them from the natural resources, the rocks and so forth. So from the rocks we can get these made resources. And we are saying also another made resource is glass. Yeah, the glasses that we are used to, that we know. Glasses are made from minerals found in sand. From minerals found in sand. So from sand, through human activities, we can be able now to acquire our glass, and we know the various uses of glass that we are depending upon at the moment. We still have other made resources. For instance, we have ceramics. When we are talking about ceramics, such as bricks and porcelain, they are made from clay. So ceramics are made from, we are saying ceramics such as bricks. So from ceramics we can get bricks, porcelain. So from ceramics we can get bricks, we can get porcelain. These are made from clay. So when we talk of clay, clay is soil. That is a natural resource, but from that natural resource, we are able to get a made resource, the ceramics, the bricks that we have, and we can use bricks for a number of activities that will benefit human beings. So from that, we can also look another resource. Resource number 9, we have cements. And when we talk about the cements, we know it is made for, we are able to extract cements from limestone. From limestone. Yes, we are able to extract our cements from limestone, clay, and other minerals. And other minerals. We are able to get our cement. So we are saying the cement is not naturally available, but it is a made resource. Whatever is naturally available is the limestone we have. We can be able to get that one, and then from the naturally available limestone, then we shall get our cements and be able to use it for other purposes like construction and so forth. So we know that these minerals that are found within the rocks are very important. So the rock becomes the natural resource, which we extract the limestone and we get our cements. The 10th made resources, medicines. Yes, when we talk about the medicines, medicines are made from plants. are made from plants. Not only plants alone, we also get others from animals. So we get medicine from plants, we get medicine from animals, and also we get medicine from some minerals. So when you're talking about medicine is a substance you will use and correct instruction from doctors and so forth, the people who have done the field of drugs and so forth. So you will take medicine so that maybe to correct an imbalance or an illness you have. So for us to get this medicine, then medicine is a made resources that we extract them from the natural resources that we have. The natural resources we have the plants, natural resources we have the animals, and natural resources we have the minerals. So from minerals, plants, and animals, we can be able to extract medicines which goes long way in healing us whenever we fall sick, whether we are human beings or other animals, they can be healed. So we can see we have tried as much as possible to mention close to 10 made resources that are there and are important for our own existence. And it is not only us, when we manufacture medicines, it can be used to treat human beings as well as animals in case they fall sick. Now, after having done and mentioned some of the examples of made resources, we want to see the field of technology, what the technology has done as far as the resources are. Because technology, when it comes into any new ideas that comes up, you'll find that made resources many new things they will keep on inventing. So we are saying technology and made resources. Technology and made resources. So whenever we are talking about technology, advancement in technology will come up with a number of things, and you'll find that we shall keep on acquiring other made technology. Technology is there to improve whatever we are getting from the natural resources. So we are saying a variety of made resources increases. A variety of made resources increases as the new technology is discovered. So a variety of made technology increases as the new technology, as the new technology is discovered. This means materials are continually being developed. For instance, when we talk of the plastics that were invented in the year 1900, when the plastics were invented in the year 1900, we see that those days when people are not using the plastics, they came into being and they are now widespread, being used all over. In applications, we can find now the plastics are being used on toys. Toys are made from plastics. We can go even computer parts are also made from plastics. We can see how now technology has come in. Under the discovery of the plastics, now they're trying to replace other metals, woods that were being used before. So we can see that the cardboard and the paper that were being used now they are being replaced. We can talk of the shopping bags, the packaging trays are being replaced. The bankers notes, some bankers notes are being made from the plastics. Even car and aircraft body parts now, they are filling some parts of the car and the body parts are being made of plastic. So we are saying, well, as long as technology comes up with an invention, then we find that the made resources also keeps on changing depending on the technology. We have another example of carbon fiber. when you talk of carbon fiber, since it was developed recently, we are seeing a number of things happening. There is a higher replacement of metals because of carbon fiber. F1 racing cars, already they are using that carbon fiber. The tennis racket are using carbon fiber. Golf clubs are using carbon fiber. Hockey sticks, we can see carbon fiber being used. Also, we can take about frames of bicycles, wheels, and masts of yachts that are using carbon fiber. When we talk of technology, even we come to the field of animals, plants, breeding, and so forth, we can see also technology coming in and bringing in new breeds and so forth. So over-increasing understanding of genetics, when you talk of genetics, has led to a better breed of plants and animals. So when you talk of breeds of plants and animals, through genetics, you will find technology will step in so that we can be able to come up with the breeds that can be able to withstand harsher climate. And also when you talk of plants, you can have plants that can be able to withstand drought, or they can be able also to grow in a place where there is oversupply of water. So this, with the technology, or there's cloning, crafting, and so forth, you will find that plants that have good characteristics have been taken, adopted, and grafted on other plants so that we get higher yields and so forth, higher growth and so forth. So we are saying on technology, we discover that technology has stepped in and has ensured that the made resources, they keep on increasing day by day depending on the technology. So we will want now to see these renewable and non-renewable resources. We have known the natural resources are available. We are saying, thank you, we have natural resources. But some of these natural resources that are available naturally, we can misuse them. Some of them cannot replenish themselves. They cannot, there's no replacement. When you use them, it will take a number of 1,000 years or million of years for them also to be replaced. So such a kind of resources, we call them non-renewable resources. But if a resource can be able to replenish itself, to replace itself, then we call it a renewable resource because it can replace. For instance, if you are cutting a tree, you cut a tree and you're planting another one, then we shall say that tree is a renewable resources as long as you are cutting one and you are planting another one. So there's no situation whereby trees will fail to be available because you cut, you plant others. So renewable and non-renewable resources. So natural resources, they can be categorized under the renewable resource or non-renewable resource. We are saying some resources such as sunlight. For instance, we have spoken about sunlight. We are saying there's no way life can be there without sunlight, because sunlight is there to ensure that we are having a correct temperature that we can exist within. The sunlight is there to do that, and it will enable also plants to manufacture food, and within that food, other living organisms will depend on that food that has been manufactured by plants. So we are saying some resources such as sunlight are renewable. We are saying sunlight is renewable and will never run out. We are saying a resource like sunlight is renewable and it will not run out as long as the sun keeps on rising daily. So we cannot talk of a day we are not going to have a sun. A sun will keep on rising daily for another number of years, maybe millions of years or billions of years to come, we shall still be having sunlight. So when you talk about the sunlight, then we say it is a renewable resource, because at every given time, as long as the sun rises, then you will be having the sunlight, and plants will be there to use that sunlight, get its energy, and manufacture its food. We are saying other resources such as minerals. We are saying other resources such as minerals. Yes, these minerals, like iron, we are giving an example like iron. Yes, iron are non-renewable and can never be replaced once they are used. So we are saying the sun, we saw the sun is a renewable resource, but when it comes to minerals such as iron, we are saying it is non-renewable. So once it has been used, to be replaced, it is difficult. So when iron are being mined, they are being extracted somewhere, once it is used, it is very difficult to replace. So we are saying a renewable resource is the one that is replaced by natural process. By a natural process and about the same rate as at which it is being used. What are we saying? We are saying a renewable resource is that one which is replaced by a natural process at about the same rate at which it is being used. So we are saying, for instance, if we give an example of a tree, and you are using this tree as a natural resource, maybe you are going to cut trees for the sake of getting timber. As long as you are cutting these trees to gain timber, to get timber, and you are planting other trees to replace the timber that you are cutting, as long as you cut and plant others, so that the population almost it keeps on the same, then we say it is a renewable resource. You are doing a management that is correct, you are planting some trees and cutting others, then it becomes a renewable resource. But however, if the process of cutting trees is higher than the process of replacing it by planting, then we can say it will no longer be renewable, because it will reach a point whereby the trees that were being cut, you have cut everything that you cannot replace the other ones that you're planting. So it will fail to become a renewable resource. So some of the renewable resources are under human activities. We can control what is renewable when we give an example of trees. Then we are saying, if the amount that is being used certainly rises, then the resource may eventually run out. So if you are planting and cutting trees, and then the rate of you cutting to gain a timber is higher than the rate that you are planting that timber, then that tree will fail to become a renewable resource, because your activity is not well managed. You are not managing your activity of cutting trees while replacing them correctly. So you need to balance the way you are cutting trees to use and the way you are replacing that tree by planting it. If you don't control it, then it will not be a renewable resource, because your activity you have destroyed, you have not planted accordingly. So we are saying, so if we give an example of a forest, and it is easier for you to replace a man-made forest that you only plant a particular type of tree, you come, you harvest. It is easier for you to replace a man-made forest than for you to replace a natural forest. Natural forest can be replaced, but the way you replace a natural forest is difficult than the way you replace a man-made forest. Trees that you plant and you can cut them, you gain that is okay. But a natural forest that had been existing naturally, you destroy. For you to gain another forest that is natural, it will take many, many years for you to replace a natural forest, maybe more than your lifespan. You know, we have lifetime that we need, that human beings can live maybe between 70, 80 years or 100. That's the lifespan of human beings. So if you find that you are replacing natural forest in 150 years, then you have been overtaken by time. Now we are saying poor management of resources can make it non-renewable. Poor management of resources can make renewable resources non-renewable. So human activities, human beings, we need to be very careful the way we are managing the renewable resources. Some of the renewable resources can be non-renewable if our activities are not well managed. Now, for instance, we can go, when you talk of air, water, sunlight, and living things, are considered to be renewable resources. I repeat again, when we are talking about the natural resources like air, water, sunlight, and living things are considered to be renewable resources. For instance, when we talk of air, we know air comprises of a number of gases. For instance, if we talk of, we know a higher percentage of gas called nitrogen. In fact, the air, it comprises close to 78% of the air is nitrogen. And there are some organisms which will use the nitrogen. Some organisms, we call them the nitrogen fixing bacteria, will be able to fix the nitrogen from the atmosphere to the soil, and other organisms will be able to relieve the nitrogen from the soil back to atmosphere. But we know another human activity, if you decide to burn, you decided to burn a forest and so forth, it is another way you will be releasing nitrogen back to atmosphere. So we can find that there is a way nitrogen will go back to soil, get space in the living organism and plants and so forth, and go back to atmosphere. And it is as if it is a nitrogen cycle going back to living organism, going back to atmosphere. That's air. When we talk of oxygen, we say yes, oxygen also can be replaced. It is a renewal. Why? Human beings will use oxygen, and the oxygen that has been produced by plants, and the plants will depend upon human beings to produce carbon dioxide. So human beings take in oxygen from the air, and we breathe out the byproducts of the carbon dioxide. Then we'll find the plants will use that carbon dioxide with the water to manufacture this food through the process of photosynthesis. And we'll find that when these plants die, they will decompose, become nutrients, then they will be used up by other plants. So there's a way we can breathe carbon dioxide back to atmosphere, and from that atmosphere, the plants are able to grab that carbon dioxide that we have left in the atmosphere, to use it and also to produce oxygen. When they produce oxygen, we are able to use it. So oxygen is a renewable resource, depending on how living organisms are interrelating and so forth. When we talk of sunlight, we say it is renewable because sunlight, as long as the sun rises, there's sunlight. And we are told the sun is there, is guaranteed. It is there for millions and millions of years. For instance, it can be there for another billion years. So sunlight is a renewable resource. As long as the sun rises, we can use it for a proper temperature, for organisms to exist and so forth. And when we talk about living things, we are saying living things are renewable resources because they have the ability to reproduce. An animal will live, reach its productive age, it will give birth to another young one. So it is a renewable resource. Whether this adult animal will die, yes, it will die, but it has given further to young ones, another new breed of living animals. So we can say living things are renewable resources because they do reproduce. As long as these living things can reproduce, then they are renewable resources. But if they become sterile, and we say, no, that is wrong. It's not natural if they become sterile. Maybe we have interfered with that system. So as long as they breed, we say it is okay, it's a resource. So we have said the renewable resources are air, water, living things, sunlight. We have categorized the four: air, water, sunlight, living things. And when you talk about water, we are saying water is a renewable resource. You know the process. Water, if it is burnt, it changes into vapor, it goes to atmosphere. There's a formulation of clouds. Well, when it rains, it goes back to the oceans. But the scientists have come up, since the earth was discovered, the amount of water that was there when the earth was created is not so much different from the water that we have. And we know when we look at the earth, the atmosphere, when we look at the earth surface, most of the surface of the earth is occupied by water. There are a lot of seas. Water is everywhere. But apart from water being landmass, meaning being everywhere, the continent and the oceans that we have, even the living organisms as they exist, as long as they are alive and they can do their own activities, within them there are water. So water is everywhere. And we are saying water is a renewable resource. You can burn, when you burn it, it will change to water vapor. It will cool, it will still come down. So there is that cycle of water. So we are saying water is a renewable resource. But what about Those are renewable resources that we have mentioned: the water, the air, the sunlight, and the living things, animals and so forth. Because they reproduce, do they die, but they have given birth to young ones, then we say it's a renewable resource. But when we talk of non-renewable resources, is when now we deal with natural gases like, we have natural gases, and this is serious. We have coal, mineral like coal. So we have coal, and we have oil. The oil that is everywhere, it is a non-renewable resource. There is a way this oil was formed. I think it took many millions of years for this oil to come up. Maybe from the dead living organisms, if there were coral reefs, the fossils for a long time, through compression, then we had the oil. When we extract this oil, it will not remain. After it has been exhausted, it is a non-renewable oil. So as long as human beings are depending on the coal, we should ask ourselves, when oil has been used, when it is depleted, what are we going to rely on? So coal and oil are non-renewable resources. And natural gas, sometimes when we go, there are natural gases, also natural gas. Yes, there are places you'll go and you'll find this natural gas coming up, being present naturally. So when we extract them and we use these natural gases, they get depleted when we use them. So they are non-renewable resources. The coal, the oil that we know, the natural gas that we know are non-renewable resources. So we are saying many millions of years took to form them. So when we use them, they are non-renewable. Because when we want them to also to be formed, it will take many more years for us to get oil in these rocks and so forth. So they are non-renewable. Now, we want to look living things as a resource. Living things as a resource. Why we can agree that living things are a resource, why they are. We shall also check other resources. Living things as a resource. Yes, on living things as a resource, living things are a resource for humans and other organisms. We are saying living things are a resource for humans and other living things, meaning other organisms, meaning human beings will depend on these living things. We, human beings, we can depend upon them, and other living organisms will also depend on these living things. Example, animals eat plants. For instance, we are looking animals as a living thing, and we are also looking plants as another living thing. So we can see that animals eat plants. They depend on plants. And a plant is a living thing. One living thing called animal is depending upon another living thing called a plant. And a living thing called animal is depending upon another living thing called plant. It is eating a plant to exist. And we are saying the animals, they can be able to eat plants as well as they can also eat other animals. Of course, if we had, we normally have animals we call omnivorous. Animals called omnivorous, they are able to feed on plants, that's okay. They are also able to feed on other animals that are called omnivorous. So we can say, yes, it is a living thing or a living organism, but depending on other living things that are feeding on them. Then we are saying sometimes living things can use their organisms as places to live. What we are saying that, yes, some living organisms can live in other living organisms. They can live in other living organisms as their habitat. For instance, we have animals such as tapeworms, and when we talk of tapeworms, they can be able to live comfortably in a gut of other animals like a dog. They can live within a dog. Tapeworms, they can also find their ways in human beings. That is, okay, we have some organisms that can be able to live within human beings, and human beings, to deal with them, you can take drugs, medicine, and so forth, to ensure that you don't become a habitat of other animals staying within you. And you know they can cause diseases and so forth. Yes, they can cause diseases within you and so forth. So we are saying living things as a resource. We are saying that a resource because, one, they are able to reproduce. Living things as a resource. They are natural resources because they are able to reproduce, meaning they can die, but they give forth to young ones. We are also saying there is a close interdependence. When we look plants can be able to manufacture sugar. They can be able to manufacture nectar with an intention of attracting particular insect so that these insects can come and conduct what we call cross-pollination, benefiting them, but they have decided to manufacture this nectar so that they can attract this animal. So we are saying living things can depend upon other living things to coexist well, to survive. Living things depend on their surroundings. They depend on their surroundings for the supply of resources that they need, like they will need water. Some living things will be able to depend on rocks. Maybe that will be their habitat. Some living things will depend on air as a resource. Others will depend on soil to supply the materials they need for their life. Sunlight is there essentially for plants to make their own food and to keep the earth to keep the earth warm for life to exist. We know if the earth decides to become cold, then life will not be there. So we are saying living things are renewable. Living things are renewable. It's a renewable resource. Living things are a renewable resource because they reproduce. And once they reproduce, we can have an example of a forest that has been cut down can regrow. You can cut down a whole forest, and that forest can regrow. So if the forest regrows, then we can say, yes, this forest is a resource. It is a renewable resource. Replacing some forest may just take a few decades for you to replace. Others, if they are natural forest, then it will be a bit difficult to replace. We have just seen living things as a resource, and I'm saying in our next lesson, we shall continue on air as a resource. We shall start from air as a resource, then we shall see air is comprised of a number of gases. We shall see this number of gases under what percentage and what is their use, importance in life. These gases are there just in a percentage with no use? No. We shall want to know whether gases such as ozone, is it important? Gases such as water vapor, there is also a gas can exist in the form of water vapor. Argon, is it important? How is it used? The nitrogen that is present, over 75–8%, how important is it in our life? So we shall stop there for today, and we shall continue in our next lesson on air as a resource. Thank you.